Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, today is Monday, September 23rd, 2019. Kind of roll call.
Missouri? Here. Basil?
Here.
Whaling?
Here.
DeBrusk?
Here.
Meyer? Here. Kraus?
Here. We have the minutes of September 19th. Were there any changes or corrections? Is that correct? 19th? No. Excuse me, one second. 9th, I'm sorry. Okay, September 9th. Are there any changes or corrections? Is there a motion?
Yes, so moved.
Second.
There was a motion and a second. Any questions of that motion? Roll call.
Missouri? Yes. Basil?
Yes.
Whaling?
Yes.
DeBrusk?
Yes.
Meyer? Yes. Kraus?
Yes.
First report.
Total tax income received since the August 26th meeting is $273,464.22. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Before I go into recognition of audience, we have some guidelines that we try and follow. Those are printed back there. If anyone wishes to address the board tonight, we try and limit it to 3 minutes. Total public participation is 30 minutes. But I know some of these subjects are probably near and dear to you. As they taught me in speech class, get in, get out, make your point. Make it short, sweet, and simple as fast as you can. But we recognize the fact that you're here for a reason. The first item, well, first of all, anyone from the audience wish to address the board? Pastor?
Well, 3 minutes is hard for a preacher, but I got home, so I wrote it down so I would keep it really concise. And I understand we're considering the issue on marijuana and so forth, and we got a beautiful community. What's made Beecher beautiful is the people. We have good people in our community. So I came home from work and I just wrote a few notes down. I'm just going to give you probably about 3 minutes. Mr. Mayor, now you can ring the bell, amen. And you know, I thought about, is it ever right to do wrong? In good conscience, can you answer the question with an affirmative? And of course, if you answer with a yes, then you'll do what you want to do. But I thought about this, whether it's right or wrong. My concerns are on the short term and the long term, because I thought about the long term with marijuana and so forth. It may look good for the village, we may be able to generate income. I know our village needs to have more income, but the methodology of acquiring the income, is this right? You know, I realize, I think that we might have to have police protection, security. We have cameras at our church, we have cameras at our home, and Paul was just saying how many cameras he put in and so forth at his facility. But then I thought about the long term. I thought about some influence on my grandkids and influence and those are around that are smoking marijuana. We're seeing the problem with the vape right now with people, with kids getting cancer and so forth. I thought about the kids in the high school that are presently, they're sneaking it. Now they can smoke it openly. And this is not only a money issue, but it's a moral issue. It's a moral issue. Because Beecher has a motto. If you remember that motto, and it is a proud past with a promising future. And when I was attracted to Beecher 36 years ago when I came to town, that's when they caught that. I saw the sign. Wow. A proud past with a promising future. This is where we're going to build a church. You know, I thought about if this decision to produce marijuana, purchase marijuana, promote marijuana in the village of Beecher will be destroying the moral integrity that our forefathers built this town upon, this community, upon a proud past and a promising future. And how grave will the cost be? I would not want my grandkids or my granddaughter to know that I endorsed the production, the purchase, the promotion of marijuana. Here's my greatest concern. My family, my daughter, my son-in-law, they live on Eagle Lake Road in Route 1, and you live right down the street. And we all know how busy that intersection is. I travel it, you travel it, trying to turn east or trying to go west. You gotta hold on. I hope everybody's paying attention. And nobody's doing their texting, so they don't run into you and you get killed at that intersection. You remember Ruth Nelson was killed there, Dorothy, her best friend, was killed there years ago. And I thought about that, and what's going to be the impact with the marijuana, how these people will be impaired, the crashes and the crime rate and so forth. And I thought about this, if I didn't say anything about it, and this happened to my wife, and my kids, I think I would have to carry that to the grave, that I never spoke up about it. And you know, you pastor, as a pastor here, we support our community, we work with the community, we love the people, and we work with people. And I think before it goes to the point where it ever gets voted on, I think we need to look at those values, not the money, but the moral value of it. Then we gotta ask ourselves, if you stood before God, is it right? You stood before your pastor, be endorsed, and then ask yourself, is this really the right thing to do? Is it really right to do wrong? God put that on my heart. I only had about 10 minutes to write it down, but that's about the shortest 3-minute speech you'll hear from me. God bless you, folks. We always keep this in prayer. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else from the audience wish to address the board? Okay, tonight, the first item on it is the last meeting, actually the last 2 meetings, we've been discussing the possibility of waiving or putting a moratorium on our impact fees to try and increase some growth in the village on existing lots. Last meeting, I explained to the village board what I learned, what the school board discussion was, and after that, the village board, for the most part, wanted to further discuss this with the school tonight, and we welcome you, we're glad you're here, and I open it up to the board for discussion.
If you could give us a minute to take roll.
Sure, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Good. Good call to order then, and who's not here? Gary's not here, Gary and Ron, okay. Note to.
Ron had a death in the family, he's with his mother and stepfather passed away.
Very good. All right, then I will open to public comment, maybe have public comment?
Thank you. Maybe we should start out with the discussion that we had, maybe you can explain to the rest of the village board what happened at your meeting when you, or at your, I believe it was a committee meeting that you had about the reason behind the decision.
Yeah, certainly. So several months ago, we were approached that the village was having conversations about either having a moratorium or readdressing exactly what the impact fees were. How it was explained is that there would be some benefits to some additional growth in the village. One thought is that by doing something with the impact fees might help to spur that growth. So then I took that, sent it to a school board finance committee meeting, and we had a conversation about that. Currently, the school is experiencing a period of growth. We've gained about 70 kids in the last 2 years, including 50 this year. We got another year like this year, next year, then we will be at our all-time high as an organization. And one that, we have a little bit of room to grow, but we don't have a lot of room to grow. And so at that point in time, considering that, over the last 3 years, I think we've averaged, between $30,000 and $35,000 a year in impact fees. At that point in time, the finance committee was not interested in moving the conversation forward.
Good. One question that did come up at the last meeting, I thought I knew the answer, but I didn't specifically ask you, so I'll ask you now. You mentioned about 3 empty classrooms. Or is that actually 3 classrooms that are physically empty and not being used? You don't remember?
So we have one classroom that's physically not being used at the junior high. We have one classroom that I believe is not being physically used for anything at the elementary school. And so we probably have another classroom at the elementary school that we could repurpose pretty quickly for a classroom. But we don't have any empty classrooms at the high school. As a matter of fact, we've actually had internal conversations about what we currently have with respect to facilities isn't adequate with respect to certain functionalities, and so trying to repurpose some of the existing spaces that we have.
And then on the increased enrollment that you had, there was a sentiment that you thought, or opinion that most of the kids that were coming into the school were from out of the country? The majority was that?
Out of the who?
Out of the country. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
out
in the country.
Well, Brazil this time. Yeah, that's, we're getting quite a few from out of the country. I don't know that, well, I don't remember the exact numbers, but, yeah.
Our
And-
buses are full.
Our buses are full, there you go, which is another.
Seems like there's more
And some-
activity out in the country right now.
There-
Seems like there's more activity out in the country with people moving out there than there are, it seems like in town. From what I can see, especially out around my neighborhood, so.
Out of curiosity's sake, do the houses in the country, if you build, do they pay the impact fee? So it's only the in-town that pays for
And
the
if it's a
impact fee?
5-acre plotted subdivision, then they would, otherwise not.
But like a single-family house that decides to build on an acre lot, they wouldn't pay the impact fee, and you could get 5 kids out of it. Anyone else?
So I'll start it out, just that way the board knows. I was one that was definitely adamant of, having the school board here, where the school board could hear it, straight from the trustees' mouths without playing, speakers in between, with the mayor and the superintendent having to speak to each other and relay messages as to how the board's thinking or what they're thinking, and then that being relayed back to you. I wanted you guys to hear it straight from us. I'm the one who brought this up. Through my travels for work, I travel the entire south suburbs. Okay, I am in the construction industry. And I see, when this conversation started, is I brought it up to the mayor and the administrator, is I said, something's going on besides, in my opinion and a guess, besides the fact that we're close to Indiana. Because there's growth happening in communities around us, and we're not getting any. And so we decided, I said, I think a big part of it may be what the cost is for a builder or developer to put a shovel in the ground. And I asked that question. What does it cost a builder or anybody who buys a single lot in one of these subdivisions, if I were to buy a single lot on Fairway Drive, or if I were to buy a single lot in Prairie Crossings, what would it cost me to put a shovel in the ground before I did anything? And that answer is about $15,000 cash out of pocket. So I then asked, well, what are other communities around us charging? And it's real easy to look at Peatone and Monee because geographically they butt up to us and say, okay, here's what theirs are, we can mimic that, or we should be close to that. Me personally, I always feel a very good comparable to the village of Beecher is the village of Manhattan. They are in a very rural setting. They don't have real close proximity to an expressway, i.e. 57. They don't have massive, huge industrial within their village. They have some newer subdivisions, but they have an old downtown area. Population-wise, they're very close. So some of the information that we requested the administrator to gather for us was information on that. And this is part of the stuff that I don't think the school board has had seen possibly maybe till tonight, but it's in the packet where the village of Manhattan, let me find it again, I'm sorry, bear with me. The village of Manhattan this year, to date, as of 8/14, August 14th, has issued 135 building permits for new construction homes. In the year 2018, they issued 134. 2017, 98. 2016, 83. 58, 47, 46, 29, and we can go back to 09 where they were 42. The number's steadily increasing. Why does Manhattan have that growth and we don't? So these are some of the questions that we asked. Some of our challenges, as you know, that we're looking at is creating growth within the community.
whether it be commercial, industrial, and so forth. And some of the biggest things we hear, and which we've learned through the comprehensive plan and that, is that in order for those things to happen, population needs to be there also. And some of the, and so either way, I truly feel as though this is almost a last ditch effort. I mean, some of us have talked about it before. I mean, this is everything we got. If we make a move like this and we were to impose, say, a 3-year or 4-year moratorium on this, and we get no growth, then that's it. I mean, we unloaded, barrel's empty, we got nothing left. But until we try, we have no growth. 0 of 0 is nothing. We need to add to the total EAV. I did have a couple of questions. What is the enrollment this year?
It's about 1075.
1075? So it's really only 29 higher than you were in 14, 15, 4 years ago.
Sounds about
Illinois report card was 1046 at that time.
Sounds about
What year was the junior high built?
right. 07.
07. Do you know what the enrollment was that year probably?
Less than that, our peak was about 1020, or about 1125 or 1130, and that happened in about 2011 or 2012.
So you've had as many as 1130, 55 more than you got this year.
Yep.
So in other discussions, just with friends and neighbors and stuff, is some of the questions may be, where did that 50 come from? There could be a possibility that we're getting a lot of turnover in existing Old Beecher, right? So when somebody comes in and buys a new home on Penfield Street or on Catalpa, there's no impact fees, correct? Houses exchange hands, you gain new students if the family that purchases the home has children. I can tell you this, as a homeowner and resident of this town. I have a son that's a freshman. I have a son that's in 7th grade. I'm seriously questioning whether or not I stay here after my youngest graduates. And I think that may be some of the problem here, is that families may be here for the school district and are okay with paying the taxes to live in Beecher when they're utilizing the school district, but there are some that after they're done with the school district, they're gone. And that may be where you're getting some of your turnover. And how can we help that is by increasing the total EAV and easing the burden on the existing rooftops and the existing taxpayers within this community. And that only happens through growth, commercial, industrial, and residential. And I can tell you, over the last 10 years, we've averaged 6.6 new homes a year. After those numbers I've read you to Manhattan. And it's just my opinion, and I wanted the school board to hear it from me and not in a translation between the mayor, the administrator, and the superintendent. This is why I brought this up, this is why I'm thinking of it, and this is why I'm going to support this. How this affects the school, I would hope that the perpetual income generated from new homes that this creates equals out or covers more than the loss of the $3,000 one-time impact fee you get off of a 3-bedroom home. So,
And every year on a 3-bedroom home, your taxes are
Perpetually.
gonna be higher than that, yeah, than the $3,000 on the one time when you get the impact fee.
but, I mean, that was the main thing, and I wanted to hear from you as to how that $30,000 a year would significantly affect the school board and affect the school, because from my understanding is that money's collected can't be used for operations. It can't be used for funding new teachers for these new students. It can only be used for capital improvements. Granted, I'm sure there's plenty of things that every year you could find $20,000 to $30,000 to do on those buildings, but is that gonna make or break a project that's being planned or not planned, or and that's only assuming we get the 6 new homes again this year. that we've been averaging over the last 10. And to mind you, that this is in lieu of land. When a developer comes in and PUD is approved and stuff, these are things that were negotiated in lieu of a developer giving the school district land, property. And that value is based on $85,000 an acre improved. We've had, without an actual appraisal, which we can go that route, my guess is that that's probably somewhere around the $35,000 range. So if that were to happen, or even say it's half that, and say say the appraisal came in at $42,500 an acre improved, the impact fees would still be 50% of what you're collecting now. And would that make or break the difference in possibly growth happening? And I can tell you that, and this is where I'll stop, but I can tell you that I was curious as to what this would do. And I went and spoke to a builder that owns lots in this village. And he leaned back and he took his glasses off and he threw them on the table and he goes, "It's about time the village started talking about something like this." And he told me that he'll pull permits tomorrow, the day after this is approved, and start finishing up some of his townhouses where he's got, that have been sitting vacant for 10 years plus. Some of the other things that he told me to think about, which I know I said I'd be done, but I'm not, is part of the problem that he has, why the building has stopped here, is the problem with comps. Them getting comps to cover people getting mortgages at the cost of what they need to build these houses for. He says, "John, I have no problem paying $15,000 in impact fees to get a building permit. It goes on to the cost of the house, but the problem is that once that's added onto the cost of the house, people can't get comps for a mortgage." So, I think I've said my share.
Anyone else?
I was one as well that wanted to meet with the school board also, just to be able to explain to you, but honestly, John just explained everything in a nutshell. We're all feeling that way right now. I mean, to sum it up really quickly, he already said it. Right now, you're getting nothing. If someone buys, there's something. And we only know if we can try, and this can be a very temporary thing, it's not forever. So, but pretty much he summed it up completely.
And these existing subdivisions have been in the book forever, so these were already planned for by the school as though they were going to be filled, they just never were. So these subdivisions, I believe, were already accounted for as something that was gonna be part of the school district. And that's the part, we have aging infrastructure out there that's dying, water mains and things that are sitting underground, they're just decaying, because they're sitting there and there's houses not being built. So,
Growth is inevitable, be it new construction or established, it's gonna happen.
Anyone? This is part of your discussion too.
How much would you say that this would bring in extra to the school district? I guess I'm concerned that we only have 3 classrooms and there's no plan, I'm not on the facilities committee, to deal with this added growth. And we can only borrow, what do we have? We still owe $8 million, and I think we can only borrow 19 by law. So we only have 10 million if we put it there. So we don't have a plan, so would we put it towards the high school, would we put it towards the junior high? And I don't think you can move the high school over to the junior high legally, I know that somebody brought that up, but I'm just, without a plan, there isn't a plan to deal with 100 more students right now.
You asked how much, I believe the figure on the current lot evaluation, which is probably, was it its prime time way back when? I think the figure was $3,000, wasn't it, Bob, we figured out? So right now, we're figuring at the very least, the lots are probably half the price of what they were, and we were pretty much on the same page as saying, well, it probably needs to be reevaluated because this ordinance was issued back in its prime.
Right.
So probably, you're really talking about the item would be like $1,500 if the evaluation, if the survey or whatever you want to call it comes back.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's the $30,000, it's gotta look at the whole picture, and do we have an entire plan? It's probably not the $30,000 or the $35,000, it's like, where do we go from here? If we're going to bring in another 100 students. I don't know where I actually printed out the enrollment numbers from the report card last November. So we were at 1,014 according to the report card. And now you're saying we have, how many? 1,075? So, I mean, we would need to develop a whole new plan, figure something out, I think, if we.
Well, I think that this really, the message is here is that accept stagnancy or look for progress. And I think that with the money that is in reserves and then everything, I think we need to look for progress.
Well, do you guys have, I mean, I didn't realize you guys said most of your new construction kids are coming from the country. Do you guys have you guys gone to them and tried to negotiate anything? I mean, because it sounds like the village is picking up the tab for other kids that are not in the village limits.
So they really can't, that's the problem. When this was put in place, it's really a lag fee, so a new home won't actually get the taxes collected on it until about a year and a half, 2 years after it's up and the occupancy permit is in place. So this was an attempt to try, so it's called lag fee because of that 2-year lag. Try to get it because of the impact on the school, to try to get that in place right away, to pay it over to the school again towards capital improvements and things like that. So that's really what that is. And then after that, once those taxes are in and they're starting collected, then they're done every year.
But if a developer donates land, he doesn't have to pay
Correct.
the impact fee because he donated land in lieu of the cash. That only happened, I think, in one instance.
That happened over at the junior high, right?
Yeah.
And received that land, the school district did, free, and have received not a single child, not a one. That subdivision, the streets have not even gone in. The subdivision doesn't even exist. And yet the new school sits on that property.
I think my opinion would be that village should be focusing more on industrial, try to get that going, because that has zero impact on the school district, but yet still generates money for the village. I think that would be the first step what I would do, we try to contact more industrial to be built in this town
We have.
versus rooftops.
We have. And one of the common things we hear with the most common thing we hear
Not enough rooftops.
is not enough residents.
And just, you know, and you probably know this, just bear with me, this isn't the only thing we've tried. We've tried free water for a year or two. We've done a TIF district, we talk about commercial property, that's what we're trying to encourage there. I believe there's a couple in the old downtown, we waived off fees to try and get that going, so this is not the only thing we've tried over a number of years.
Enterprise zone.
Enterprise zone that we're in.
We did some incentives for existing businesses, like
So-
American, to expand that.
Like I said, we've tried a number of things as well. Anyone else?
What about other options in terms of, just looking at financial aid from, and reducing the impact fee? What other financial options have been considered
As far as,
to builders or,
we've done
in the
just about
structure.
everything we can up to this point. The TIF districts, the enterprise zones, the free water to the homeowner, not the builder, so the homeowner would get the benefit of it. We've done just about everything we can to try and encourage growth. In fact, for as many years as I've been around and others on the board, as far as commercial growth, the TIF district was a bad word in this town for the longest time, even though some of us have said if everybody else has got one, why don't we? It's got to be a benefit. So it's not the only thing we've tried. Financial benefits, there's no single financial benefit we could do except what we've already done.
what about any type of subsidy from the village financial results and fees to subsidize the school district for their portion of the impact fee? To supplement or incentivize us to.
So what you're asking for with the village, then replace the fee that we're asking you to waive?
You guys collect 67% of the property taxes.
I understand.
We don't have that much money.
We get far. Our property tax collected on a yearly basis is a little over $600,000, $630,000.
It also costs $10,000 for one child to go to the school district too.
Absolutely,
So-
absolutely. I got no problem paying a property tax bill. I love the school, my kids love the school, and I'm not saying that. But to ask the village to cover that we're trying to bring in the new growth. We're looking for opportunities to add to the total EAV, to bring more taxpayers in.
I understand that, so then
See, and
support it.
a $8,000 tax bill, we only get $500 out of it. The school district and the fire department are the other taxing bodies that get it, among other things, the library. But we only get approximately $5,000 out of that tax bill.
And what we were
Provide the
looking at,
services we
yeah,
have.
with this $15,000.
Just trying to consider
Yeah,
some
no,
other
with the
options.
$15,000 of, fees that we were considering waiving, we were thinking of dropping it to $1,500, which is a permit fee. All the rest of that money is stuff that would come to us that we're saying we'll do without.
So
Right.
So we're already knocking out 10,000 or 12,000 per house,
the village
you know, as
just off
part of what
of,
we're willing to do.
just off of water and sewer tap-in fees that we're waiving on our end, on a single-family house, regardless of size, is a little over $6,300. That
Can you,
we're incentivizing. That's money that is used for our infrastructure, for us providing water mains and sewer to these homes. We're taking a hit of $6,300.
Which you see by looking at our roads, we do need to start repairing some of our infrastructure as well, but this is our last ditch effort to try and reduce growth.
So if
So
I
can-
understand, excuse me,
go.
if I understand what you're saying, you're taking that 7,000 off of that $14,000 figure, so that would reduce the building permit to 7,000?
That's just part of it. That's part of it.
Is there
There's,
information
we would
somewhere that
take-
you're looking at?
yeah, it's in the packet.
Can
It's
you
in the
show
packet,
which
right,
page?
right here. It's not far in.
I don't know.
Go like a page or so.
They don't have the
past.
full board packet,
Right.
they just have the part that deals with this issue, so I don't know what page that would be.
We did have a park impact fee on there as well, which is
I think we
$225.
just listed.
It's a page that's on village letterhead, it shows what the current fees are.
Okay,
It looks similar to this.
all right, just like to follow along. This one?
It's just before the ordinance explaining the school cash and move land fee. It looks like this here,
And then,
it's about halfway back in your packet, I would say.
yeah, I was trying to reconcile essentially this.
And to answer Juan's question, a three-bedroom, single-family home right now
Thank you.
would cost you $14,231 to build in town. If the board passes the moratorium that it's been discussing, that $14,231 becomes $1,500. And that $1,500 goes directly to the third-party consultant that we hired to do the building inspections and plan reviews. So the village would not make a penny on that building permit. And to that end, neither would the school district,
Right.
to be honest with you. So we're waiving about 7,000 or 8,000, and you guys are waiving the cash and move land fee,
We'd actually be waiving about $9,300.
9,300.
If you take the total permit fee to the village is $10,800. We would still be collecting the $1,500, which pays for our inspectors to go and do the plumbing inspections, electrical inspections, and so forth, which is a straight pass-through. That's what they're charging us, is $1,500 a hole, so we got that negotiated down. And the rest of it, so if you subtract the 15 out of the 10.8, you're looking at about $9,300 that the village is sacrificing.
So you're trying to get to a zero cost, $1,500 cost.
$1,500.
Right.
I think part of the, one of the things with being in the industry, and that is, I can tell you when they do it, it's like, okay, if I build a 3-bedroom house, it's this much. If I build a 4-bedroom house, it's this much. If I build townhouses, it's this much for this side, this much for this side. And the prices are kind of all over the place a little bit, you know, especially with the school impact. Ours are pretty well set, the permit fee, you know. But the main thing that sparked this is one of the subdivisions, Nantucket Cove, is currently for sale. And we thought that would be an excellent marketing tool, is that, hey, currently, there's a 4-year moratorium on all impact fees. And if you come here, if you purchase this subdivision, that there's approximately 100 empty lots left of, you could build a house for $1,500. It costs you $1,500. That's it, not $14,231.
I believe what speared this discussion is the fact that the asking price for Nantucket Cove came out to $7,500 a lot, but yet the village was charging $15,000 in fees. So who's gonna go in there and buy in that subdivision when your fees are double the price of the land? And that's a problem. And as administrator, I hate waiving fees. I mean, I'd love to collect these tap-in fees for water and sewer, but I'm collecting nothing now. No one's buying anything, no one's building anything, so I'm collecting zero anyway. And that's the way I look at it. You're
A
collecting
lot of
nothing.
businesses will not come unless you have the population. The population drives businesses to come here. They're not gonna open shops if the population is not here.
So what are they looking at for a number?
Yeah,
What would their number be?
Every business is different, I'm sorry.
They don't give us
The
a
seminars that
standard.
we've been to, it's no longer a number, it's an overall picture and formula of what they look at. It's not only just rooftops anymore, as it used to be years ago. Nobody knows what that number is. It's a different number for each business.
So we're kind of just shooting in the dark then, is what you're saying? We could do this and have some growth and no business is coming in anyway because we don't meet their criteria.
And we could do this and you couldn't get any new homes either.
I understand that.
Bottom line is, we're trying something to fill the empty lots that we have that infrastructure sitting on.
If we do this and it still doesn't work, we're still sitting at the same exact number, 0, all of us, so.
And what is the, current or estimated population, do you have that?
About 4,300. We're betting we're going over I'm betting that we're going over 5,000.
I'm not.
No, no.
I'll let you know if I lose, or you know if I lose.
So, one of the other things that we looked at with this too is, in order for a house to be built, there's, when, I believe it was you, Liz, that asked, about like other options and stuff like that. So, when you look at a situation like this, and this did come up, is what can we control of this, okay? So when somebody wants to build a house, whether it be a builder or individual that, buys a lot, wants to generate their own home or whatever, there's, especially for builders and developers, there's certain things that they look at. One is pre-construction costs. What is it gonna cost me to put a shovel in the ground? That's money completely out of pocket to them. That's typically either have to be through a loan or cash. So they're taking out loans and paying interest on monies that they haven't even stuck a shovel in the ground yet. They haven't even begun the project. Then other things that are associated with this pre-construction costs are this, impact fees, building permits, architectural fees, stamps, structural stamps for the prints, and getting through planning. The next step is the actual construction of the home, okay? And these are things that none of us have any control over. That is their materials and their labor. We cannot affect that for them in any way. And then the last part of the project is closing on the house and them getting what they need to, recouping their costs, covering their interest that's paid on loans to get things going, and the running costs of that home to be built, and then profit and overhead, right? And we can't affect what they're looking for in a profit and overhead. We can't affect what they pay for their supplies and their labor. This is the only really thing that you can do where you can make a difference to them, and that's in their pre-construction costs. What's it cost them to put a shovel in the ground?
I had a question on your chart, the community breakdowns and the average costs, because I don't see the correlation. Like if you look at the top 4 highest average annual housing starts, the annual housing starts with the greatest population are the ones that have the highest fees.
Are you on the second page? Thank you.
So if it equated it to because of our fees are too high, that would not calculate that way.
Exactly.
But maybe the reason they're not coming is we don't have the resources our planning and zoning is finding that the people are asking for.
the recreation and the park districts
I
and the
agree.
bike paths and all of that.
I agree.
But I don't know if you're gonna get it this way.
This, okay, first of all, two of the ones which I didn't, in my opinion, I basically crossed off in comparison is Indiana. When you're talking about new construction, especially with residential, you can't compare us to Indiana. Indiana, Lake County, Indiana has, their property tax rate is what, 2.17 or something? Or 1.17 or something? 1.17 or
I
something.
think we
So-
agree you should exclude.
Yes,
But
yes.
it's
those-
your own
those-
chart that I'm
those-
reading, right?
Okay, first of all, I didn't make this chart, so I'm working off of it the same as you are. So, all I'm doing is, this is fed to me no differently than it is to you. I personally did not make this. So, the one that stands out to me is Manhattan. And the question is why? Why does Manhattan have that sort of growth? Their costs are higher than ours, right, or comparable, I'd say very comparable. Their average building permit costs are 16.2. How come they're building 130-something homes, new homes a year, and we're getting 6?
Can you answer that?
Sure.
It's where they sit. If you know where they sit location-wise, they can hop on 55 there, they can hop on 80. You got all that Elwood construction intermodal over on that side of the county. It's the closest you can get, right, to have a good school, rural community like ours that's not affected by the intermodal that's happening over there. But it's the farthest distance people want to go, because it's about a half an hour to it. Here, we're a little too far out from it, because we're about an hour. That's my assessment anyway.
Okay.
But if they have all that stuff and we don't, we have to find other things that will attract those people here.
I totally
I mean,
agree, that's why I want.
I can't control where we're at, where we're going, but all those towns have all those other things.
I agree,
We're
that's where it should
unfortunately
be
sitting right next
focusing.
to Indiana. So, I mean, we have to find something that's unique and different to Beecher that attracts those people here, because we don't have the intermodals or the Amazons or whatever by us. We have Indiana.
And I think another part of the problem isn't even necessarily what we talk about is the people, right? Well, for the people to come and buy a new construction home, you gotta have a developer, right? You gotta have a builder that's willing to put up these houses, right? And right now, we don't. We had one that tried. They tried to come into our market, they did 10 homes and they left.
And we asked them to come back if we considered this, and they said no.
But we have some here that have somewhat of a positive feel about this. And in answer to your question is, I mean, that's exactly it. Like, if we're comparable in that way, and they're getting that, is reduction in the price something that could possibly lure those developers to us? If they can save $15,000 a house on 100 lots, right?
Why did you say you're moving in 5 years, maybe when your kid graduates?
Why?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's any of your business, but
No,
I'll tell
I'm
you.
just saying, you alluded to the fact that
Because
this wasn't a town you want to be in 5 years from now possibly. That has nothing
I
to
don't
do
know if
with
that's-
impact fees.
Okay, hang on a minute. Before this gets out of hand, we're here to answer questions and discussion back and forth.
And
Let's stick to that.
And I thought this was a
Do
conversation
any other
between
school
us
board
and the school
members
board.
have
School board members,
comments?
Let's stick to the subject.
yes. So, again, this is something, I've said my piece, I think it's something that we're looking at to unload everything we got and see if it spurs new growth. There's a good chance where it could spur absolutely nothing.
We
And
can take this back to the school board and discuss more. Right now, does any other school board members have questions or comments?
I just wonder in the Manhattan, what is the population of Manhattan? We keep on bringing it back to that.
they're right around, yeah, it's probably.
Their sign says 7,500.
Yeah. They're over the 5,000 threshold, I know that. That's what everyone thinks we're gonna be at. But I think they're about 70, but they're growing, it's hard to say.
7,000 according to Google.
Oh, okay.
What other, results have you obtained, I mean, I don't know if it's in this packet, given I, just received it tonight, but, from nearby related districts or villages, communities of our size. To the answer around what are you doing to incentivize builders or growth?
The most, I believe it's probably in there, right, the fees and.
I'm sorry,
So it's just coming down to impact fees, there haven't been any other collaboration with nearby communities around what has worked for Manhattan, or had conversations with Manhattan leadership around that? Or whatever other comparable, whether it's Peatone or Mooney or,
yes, we have, but
Wilmington.
once again, we only have so many things that we can do, we don't have those tools available to us to do it. Like I said, all
Peatone has had a moratorium in effect for a while. Whether or not that involves the school district fee, I don't know, but Peatone has had a moratorium placed on their fees, you know, where they waive the impact fees. And they have not seen an incredible burst of growth as a result of that. Now, have they marketed that or not? I don't know. But I know they had one in effect. It's been in effect for 2 or 3 years now.
So in the information that was provided, the $5,000 impact fee for Peatone, and there's 7 tags that they had last year, that's actually with a moratorium on it, so that 5,000 is less.
That 5,000 might be what they're paying for the building department into the school. I don't know if they waive the school fee. But the police protection fee that they had on, the public works fee, they had all these fees based on services provided. They put a moratorium on there, because at one time Peatone was up to about 20. They're down, and I don't know if they've lifted the moratorium, but I know it's been in place for a few years now. And I don't think they've seen a huge spurt in growth as a result of their moratorium lift that they have.
And it may not happen here, we may see nothing, you know, that's just kind of a last ditch effort to see if there's a possibility. The biggest issue is that subdivision out there that's been in foreclosure and it's sitting there and we don't know if it's gonna sell. That's the thing we're really trying to address. It may do nothing and it may help out. And you know, I wish I had a crystal ball, but, you know.
And if it doesn't help, we're just sitting in
Then
the
we're
same
just, yeah.
spot we're in right now.
Okay, if I may, does the village board have any questions of the school board? Does the school board have any questions of us?
And finally, to clarify, you're asking for a 4-year moratorium?
We haven't decided that.
Okay, so we're unclear on the timeframe.
If I may, tonight, the village attorney has to inform us of some information in executive session.
Sure.
So right now, we will finish that discussion once we come out of executive session, which will be at the end of the meeting.
Okay.
And you'll bring it back to us after
Yeah,
that?
let you know what happened.
Then we can discuss more as a school board.
Just like when you surprise us, you can come back to us.
There you go. All right, very good.
You need to make a motion to adjourn.
Yes. Make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Say aye.
You're welcome to stay if you'd like, but thanks for coming, we appreciate it.
If you want to hear about pot, stick around.
Okay. The next item, if I may, we have been discussing the ordinance providing sales within Beecher of marijuana. It's a 600-page document, almost on a day-to-day, week-to-week. We have learned new information, which we decided that we best tonight to have the attorney present to explain what is happening, what has happened. Number one, to explain the 3% tax on the recreational cannabis, which you could consider tonight, and also authorizing the village attorney to draft an ordinance to opt out, as they say, of the marijuana. I'll let him speak, and then we can also tell you maybe that we've worked out to the municipal league conference.
So there was a huge bill that came out that was effective in July. There's actually current discussions and maybe doing another legislative round to amend that, so we're still not exactly sure where it's going. But there are some things in the bill that are certain. One is that if the village would want to collect any taxes next year, if they decided to allow it, an ordinance has to be put in place tonight and then be sent downstate to the Department of Revenue by the end of the month, so September 30th, in order to be effective to collect January 1st through next year. So there's several taxes that are currently on the book, like the hotel tax or car rental tax, which we've enacted before, but we don't collect anything because there's no hotel, there's no car rental. So if there was any inclination, I mean, even close to half, even somewhat, I would suggest putting it in place, sending it downstate, there's kind of no harm, no foul on that one. It can sit there indefinitely, at least the 3% tax is there. If a medical dispensary would come in town, which we have no control over, you know, we could still get revenue off of that. Any questions on that part, because that one's actually kind of easy.
So this is strictly just tax and that's it?
Just
It's
tax,
not
this
approving,
doesn't allow it, doesn't prohibit
turning
it.
it down?
It's just simply imposes a tax like the hotel tax that we put in place, the car rental tax, it just sits on the shelf, but until something would come in, it's not collected. And that's by the Department of Revenue, we don't do anything separately here in the village of Beecher based upon that. It's kind of like a sales tax or anything else, that all goes through the Department of Revenue.
And medical dispensaries can't really be prohibited, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So, that's why I said, if there's any inclination to tax, whether it's just simply the medical ones that we can't regulate anyway, and without even getting into a discussion about allowing others, we would have to put that in place just because of the way they enacted the law.
So why would we approve this 3%? You're saying in order to get it anywhere in the future, is what you're saying. You
And there's-
can't go next year or the year after and
We could put it in place later on, but because of the lag time, because of the way they created the statute right now, it's gonna take well over a year to get anything in place. And then there's some ultimate deadlines in 2021 that are looming there too, and again, we're not sure where it's going or not going, and that's why I kind of push to have that one on the agenda tonight in particular, whether you allow it, whether you, all of that's up for discussion, and that's fine. But putting that in place then secures, if there's a medical dispenser or anything else that comes in, you're at least getting some tax revenue on that because you have the ancillary issues.
So you're saying the medical marijuana facilities, they have, the villages that have that, had to pass that tax? Or it's not an automatic tax?
They don't have to pass the tax.
No, I'm
It's a-
saying the medical marijuana facilities that are in place right now. The villages had to enact a tax to them, or was that automatic?
No, it's an optional local tax that can be added onto it. Like we have the local option income tax of 1.5% that we increased a couple years ago. It's similar to that. They actually gave the local municipalities some control of putting a tax on that type of sale. So that's new in this bill.
Yeah, I thought the 3% was the new thing.
It is.
So I think, were you asking the ones that are in place right now that
Right.
are actively running, do those municipalities collect this tax, or because they never did this?
They could not collect this tax because it's brand new.
This is a new
That's
tax.
what I was thinking.
No, they would collect normal sales tax, things like that, but not this tax itself.
But if a medical marijuana place come in town, we would get the 3% from that also now
From
because
sales.
of this new law?
Correct, if we put this ordinance in place.
Right.
And if you don't, you just lose out on the potential of the 3%, that's all. And I don't wanna make it like sound like a life and death thing, it's just the way they put it in place, if we don't have it downstate by the end of a couple days from now, we can't collect anytime next year.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
There's a motion, it's already from 1314.
What ordinance number?
1314. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second, any questions?
Who made the motion, I'm sorry?
Trustee Kraus? Roll call.
Kraus?
Yes.
Meyer?
Yes.
Capros?
Yes.
Whaling?
no.
Basil?
Abstain.
Missouri?
Yes.
So, the rest of it, under the statute, it's very convoluted, but there's 5 different options for a municipality that they can take. We can either prohibit, I'm sorry, let me put this out there first. So any medical dispensary has to be allowed within the village. We don't have a say. We just have to allow it, okay? So as long as they otherwise meet the state requirements, get their state license and go through all of that, we cannot stop a medical dispensary. So I just wanna, everything else I talk about is just general open to the public kind of stuff, okay? So medical dispensary cannot prohibit.
Can we regulate it?
Wow.
Hours, all those types of
Wow.
things?
We could, a little bit. There are some things that you can put in place, but again, medical dispensary, we can't prohibit. Then we have the opportunity to outright prohibit anywhere in the village, other dispensaries, processing facilities, planting in fields, I mean, the whole gamut. We can prohibit all of that. The alternative to that is that we can, not necessarily allow it, because the state allows it, but we can regulate it. So where they grow, how close they're together, if there's a processing facility, how close they are. If there's a place, a dispensary that sells it, how close they are, if they're close to a school, if they're close to a church, whatever. We can regulate all that, so time, place, manner, kind of restrictions, hours of use, things like that. But that would require PZC involvement to look at that, hold public hearings, and then put something in place for that. The act does allow the village board to prohibit this type of use because it didn't put zoning in front of ordinance in a very specific section of the statute. And I don't know if that was intentional or not. I think the better part of wisdom, because it is a zoning, it's a regulation of land and use, is that if you're going to prohibit it, it still should go through the PZC. Now, if we wanted to put a stopgap measure in place, we could just simply enact an ordinance at this level. It would be put in your municipal code. But I think those ultimately will be subject to challenge later on. So like I said, whether you allow it in some way, shape, or form and regulate it, or if you prohibit it, my suggested course of action is it still goes to the PZC for that process. And then back to the village board for ultimate action.
I got a question on that. If the village board were to pass an ordinance prohibiting it, didn't go through PZC, and you're saying it's subject to challenge, the state wouldn't issue them a license anyway, would they? Because we already voted no on the ordinance. They gotta get a license from the state, and the state's not gonna go against the wishes of the municipality, I wouldn't believe.
Because there's such a limited number of licenses that are gonna be enacted or given out basically January 1st, I don't think it's gonna be a big deal next year. I think the bigger deal is as this expands, and if people are making money and they think they can make money, let's say because we're out here and you're more in the country, you could have fields, you could have your processing plant, you could have a lot of things out here that becomes really convenient that you can't do in Chicago or more urbanized areas. That is where I see a challenge coming in. That, hey, this is really a regulation of zoning, and you just put something in your municipal code. So that's, and again, while I believe the act allows that, and that's what some of the other villages and cities have done, I think the better course of action is just to run it through the PCC, have your public hearing, get a recommendation, and then take it at this, because then I think that takes away that potential challenge.
Another thing I'm hearing too is it also gives you the 1.5-mile planning jurisdiction, if it's in the zoning code.
Correct.
To either put in your regulations or
As
the
long as
prohibited use.
As long as you're exercising that extra jurisdictional area, correct.
And if I may, timeline of why you wanted this done by the first of this year, or
So the first of the year is kind of the ticking time bomb for all of this. We have to have something in place by the end of the year. Now, again, the tax one's different because at a different timeline. So prior, it was my understanding that the village board wanted the PZC to kind of look at this and start exploring this, because we have to send out notices for a public hearing. They have to consider it. There may be a continuance to the next month, et cetera. And we really need to have something in place by the end of the year if we want to prohibit or if we want to regulate in some way. Whichever way you go, but there's got to be something in place by the end of the year. Otherwise, January 1st, if a medical dispensary gets their just general license, they can come in and go in any one of your commercial districts that is zoned and just be there. It's like selling cigarettes or anything else. They could just be there. Now, they still gotta follow state guidelines, still gotta get their state license. I'm not saying it's like as easy as that, but without something in place, you leave yourself very susceptible to just anywhere.
and whether we allow it or prohibit it, during 2020, we have opportunities to change it. But in 2021, the only way you can change is by referendum. Am I correct?
If you prohibit it now, you could still change it in 2020. If it's not changed in 2020, then after 2021, there would have to be a referendum to allow.
That's why the timeline was there.
So as a board, when do we need to get this done? By like end of November then, to get it? I know it's early this year, but I mean realistically.
In December, I mean, I comfortably would love to see something in front of you in November. Comfortably.
So even December is pushing it.
Yeah, but as long as it's in place by the end of the year, I mean, even if you had to hold a special meeting, but just something by the end of the year.
This suggestion that, well, I'll make a point, it's not a suggestion, it's just something I thought about. This is moving so fast, and I can verify that down in Chicago, when you have a group of attorneys standing up there and saying, we don't know, it has to be tested, there's a lot of uncharted water here that everybody is saying, we don't know.
That's right.
If we decide to opt out now, whether it's in the spring or whether it's in the fall, not this fall, next fall, 2020, I would like to see to put a advisory referendum on the ballot asking our voters whether or not we should allow this or not. I think before we make any decision whatsoever, I think we've got to get some type of poll from them. It's the only accurate way I could think of. We talked about Facebook. Anybody can go on Facebook. You can talk about the newsletter, which may be the next best thing because it only goes to 60401. But even that's going to be skewed because you have Pheasant Lake Estates. Or you can just have any online survey. Anybody can go on there. So my thought was to possibly prohibit it now, do our research, let planning and zoning do their work, sit down, with an advisory referendum on either in the spring or fall. I think we could do it in fall, there would be time. And let some of this dust that's going on that we're watching and listening to, let it settle so that we can make a good decision and then get the opinion from the public.
I like that.
I think I would affirm that.
And that would be advisory, right? Because from what I
Advisory.
read in the act, you can't have people vote on it unless you're in the city of Chicago.
Correct. It's only after that you can do them basically a grassroots, if you prohibited a grassroots initiative, to then place it on there, and then if it passes, that would allow it. But
So an actual vote can't happen except for in the city.
Correct, correct.
So at that point, you're going to take the plan commission out of the mix?
No, I would,
Well, so if you're gonna prohibit as the president suggested, then you have two options to go. You could just do a regular ordinance, amend your municipal code. If you do that, it only affects property within the village limits. If you go through the PZC, you have the opportunity to then increase that another 1.5 miles with the extra jurisdictional territory. So if you want to create that buffer in addition to just within the village limits, that would be the reason to send it to the PZC, explaining kind of your position, so they kind of know the direction that needs to go, because they're very drastically different. You know, and if you want to prohibit it for now and take time to explore it next year, that's great. But I'd still suggest it go through the PZC. They do some work on that, bring a recommendation, public hearings, everything, bring a recommendation back to you and have something closed by the end of the year.
Yeah, and I have to be fair to point this out, the ordinance, the IML model ordinance that we referred to PZC for review, Tesca built a map on the buffers that were in that ordinance. And right now, if that current ordinance was adopted, the only place you could sell recreational cannabis in the proper zoning district is on the west side of Dixie Highway, north of Circle K. So that would be that one vacant lot, Dave's Auto Body, Marilyn Oldorf's house, and that's about it. That's the only area in that ordinance that you could sell recreational cannabis as the ordinance stands right now.
So regardless of what's voted, there's really can't put one in here anyway.
Unless you put it up there, the way the ordinance reads right now.
Only if you put the
If you put
regulations
that
in place
particular-
or you prohibit it.
if they can't, yeah, and it probably believe it, but the bottom line is we gotta get something in place, otherwise they come in without a control.
Oh, no, I completely understand that.
I lost my train of thought, I was just gonna tell you.
And some places are doing it in such a way that basically they eliminated by the regulation that you can't meet all the, basically what's called setbacks, the radiuses. And that's basically what Tesca shows, that you really only have one little small area that could maybe work with 1,000 feet here, 1,500 feet here.
And I know, I can tell you that it's all over the place as far as who's doing what.
And again, the state didn't give us a lot of opportunity to react to this. I mean, literally less than 3 months, and if you want a tax, you better put it in place. And then you got an additional 3 months to figure out the zoning. But we'll give you this little opt-out if you want.
I honestly don't believe planning and zoning has an appropriate amount of time to review this issue, pending the fact that this legislation could change in the veto session again with possible amendments to the trailer bill.
And if I may, that discussion was had too. The only discussion I first heard was the fact that they were gonna clean up language. When we went down to Chicago, I don't remember where we heard it from, somebody mentioned that some of the bill portions of it may change. Define may change. And like I said, what scares me is when the attorneys are up there and they're not even sure, and they have to wait and see how this plays out yet. It scares me. It scares me.
When it will be up there.
That's right. Fall.
November, I think it's in November.
Well, today's fall, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
This came up in the trustees roundtable, and probably out of 75 trustees in there, 65 raised their hand, they did nothing so far. It was probably 10, half and half that opted in and opted out.
I'm finding it's mixed, but then like I say, it's a lot of them are just starting to discuss this like we are and trying to decide hurry up what to do and how to do it.
So if you only have one meeting a month, really a business meeting, it doesn't allow for very quick discussion on it.
So what would be an appropriate time for the PCC if this is always changing? I mean, you just wait a year and a half till the state decides what they want to do?
You have to take action one way or the other by January 1 of 2021. That is your drop dead date, because what I've heard is when that date hits, the only opportunity you have to change what's in your books is by referendum.
So you figure if planning and zoning has a meeting in November of 2020, we still would have at least 2 meetings thereafter to approve anything, and I think the deadline, we would meet the deadline.
I still think that the PZC should probably discuss this in the spring, regardless of when the referendum is. Get an ordinance and have a hearing on it and be ready to go, because that referendum in November is the first Tuesday in November. You got a very short period of time to act. You got 60 days to act, follow that. Now, if you do a spring referendum, you're gonna get less voters at the meeting. I believe you're gonna get less voters. It's a primary.
Well, if you're gonna do an advisory referendum, you'd have to have an ordinance in place to ask the question by December 28th. Because it has to be 79 days before the.
And if we do a February one, we gotta do it next month, correct? Because it's 79 days before February 2nd?
We'd be running tight to get it in by this November.
Yeah,
That's why I said.
because I think our primaries moved way up into February.
That was March.
Did they move it back again to March?
17 when I looked.
Okay, so we might have till January to pass that.
No, December 28th.
December
I
28th.
did the math already.
Okay.
I got a question. What if the county approves this?
That's some insider information.
It is. I mean, it's one of the discussions, because they regulate that area, and then that's up to them, and that's why I said, if you're looking at prohibiting it, my recommendation is to go to the PZC, that way you gain, it's in your zoning ordinance, you gain that additional mile and a half.
That's that
buffer.
1.5 mile buffer where you can.
It's extra jurisdictional outside the village, but we still can have some say over that.
But if we, what I'm asking though is, if we wait on it, and we don't do anything till spring or
I'm confused with
whatever, if we go and we try to do an advisory referendum, we got nothing out there, right? We have, and say we just prohibit it here at the village level without it going through PCC. If the county passes it, effective January 1, a recreational could go in unincorporated, right up next to the
Right,
village
as long as they
limits.
met the state requirements and the county, yeah.
But we wouldn't be able to have an opinion because it's still, no matter what we did with the ordinance, we have a 1 mile radius of the planning. Right? We could.
Only if we go through PCC.
No, forget about the ordinance. If, let's say somebody, they wanna put a used car shop or something down, north or south of the, Hallmeister building, which is actually not in Beecher, they wanna put something there, or even go a half a mile out of town. It's my understanding, since it's in our planning area, that they would have to advise us of it.
They would, and you would have the right to object.
But they don't have to take our objection.
They could overturn the objection by 3/4 vote of the county board. And what would be thrown in your face is you don't have an ordinance that prohibits it, and you passed a tax. So I don't think the county is going to move quickly either on this issue.
If you look at what the county did with video gaming, twice now they brought up video gaming and twice they shut it down. I can't see them approving marijuana.
The county's got video gaming.
What happened was that there was, before the county could, and this is a good example, before the county could get their act together and adopt a laws to either permit it or prohibit it, some put them in and grandfathered. So are there some that are grandfathered in? Yes, you're right.
Excuse me, can I speak a little bit, because I know the county? I spoke to Commissioner Summers, and she did say that they're not gonna take it up until probably November. And their feeling currently right now is they will not put it in unincorporated.
Yeah, this November, next November.
This- They might take it up then, but they're not looking to put it in currently.
So, Roberta?
George?
I'm not clear, being on the planning and zoning committee, what do we have to do the first year? Does that include the extended, whatever we would recommend? If we recommend to prohibit it so we can do a referendum, do we have to do the other things as well?
Well, the referendum is not part of your prohibition.
Yeah.
I don't wanna make it confusing, so if the sentiment was to prohibit it, then you'd hold a public hearing on the ordinance to prohibit it.
What do we need in that? I'm talking about the extra mile and a half. Do we have to address that before, or
You
does
can
that
address it
come
at the
later?
same time.
Same time, okay, that's what I want to know,
Yeah.
what we need to address.
That's what I was asking, is if it doesn't go through PZC and it's just a prohibit at our level, does that eliminate you from having a say within the mile and a half?
It doesn't eliminate a say, but it's not it's just an advisory say. It doesn't-
You can still trigger the 3/4 vote of the board requirement, because you legally object, you file a legal objection. But your argument wouldn't be as strong because you don't have it in your zoning code.
So, if nothing else, an ordinance at this body prohibiting it in the municipal code. If you wanted to take the extra step, refer to the PZC for considering prohibition for now, have them,
We've already referred an ordinance to the PZC, so if the board prohibits, it's with the understanding PZC is still gonna come back with a recommendation. But if you guys decide to hold an advisory referendum, then the timing of the PZC's recommendation would have to be after that referendum. I think that's a good play, I don't know if
My
you can do that.
understanding is that the prohibition is just to buy more time to see what the dust settles, get all the fact together, and in my mind, it was to do the advisory referendum.
Would that be in the spring or the fall, Mr. President, which you prefer? The fall, you're gonna get more votes, but your timeline's gonna be really tight.
My thinking would be the spring.
Okay.
Yeah, my time would be the spring. Unless we begin to feel that the tornado's still coming. You know, I mean, this thing, like I said, this thing's crazy.
I think this is gonna be this way for a couple of years, because once the licenses start opening up and they expand it,
What,
that's when the real,
you've got the deadline in December to put it on in the spring, that's the bad thing.
I've got a question. I don't understand the medical dispensary that we have no control over it. So they can put one in wherever they want.
subject to state regulations.
It's like a drugstore.
There's no distance, like anything like that.
Just for my clarification, what do we as a planning and zoning committee have to do if we follow the suggestion here of opting out? Do we have any role in that at this point, or do they just decide that? I mean, I'm a little confused here. Then we talk about, well, planning and zoning will get involved after the referendum.
So let's just take it to the end of the year, okay?
Correct.
Because I think that's.
What do we as a
that's
planning and zoning
important.
committee need to do?
So there's two ways we can go. The village board can simply enact an ordinance prohibiting it, put it in the municipal code. Done, end of story.
That doesn't involve us.
End of story. They could also ask the PZC to take a look at this, to adopt a zoning ordinance, or hold a public hearing and make a recommendation on a zoning ordinance to prohibit it. That would allow for the extra jurisdictional area and put it in our zoning code instead of just the municipal code. That would be where the PZC would step in.
Or permit it, right?
Or permit it. But
Bottom
that-
line,
either one.
You have to discuss either one.
Yeah. No, I know that.
Does it make a difference that we already referred it to them?
No, again, we were trying to get ahead of this, there was so much information that was being thrown at us, and we were trying to be a little bit proactive to get something going. So there was at least a discussion happening at the PZC, there was a discussion happening here. Again, just because of the confusion and the misinformation out there, that's why this kind of joint discussion was asked for, so that the village board could give some sentiment feel if it was going to be to the PZC, or just to say, PZC, thank you for taking a look at that. We're just gonna throw it in the municipal code right now, and we're gonna take it up in the spring.
If we want that mile and a half buffer,
You gotta,
we gotta shove it to
just
the
still gotta
PVC
ask,
in the next 2 months.
still gotta ask them to look at prohibiting it then.
Well, there's
It's like our
time for
extra
September.
Does that have to
That's
happen,
on your agenda
does that
for
have to happen
September,
by the
isn't it?
first
For
of
this
this
month.
year?
By the end of the year, yes.
With the zoning commission?
Yes,
Should, so it will protect us.
yes. And that's why we had them last month, at least ask them to start taking a look at this, so that we're ahead of that, so by the end of the year, we can have something in place.
So in other words, we would prohibit, but then they'd still be working on it. And
Well, if you're gonna tell them, hey, look at prohibiting it, that's great. Then they could take that up in October, they could hold a public hearing if they wanted, or even November. Then we can come back here in December. You could then take that recommendation and enact a prohibition ordinance in the zoning ordinance. Without the PCC involvement, then it's just an ordinance at this level in the municipal code prohibiting it. And we could take that up at any time without their involvement.
but tonight, we would just be prohibiting, correct?
If we do that, then it's only prohibiting to our municipal code. It does not.
Correct, and
Right.
there's really nothing before you tonight. I don't have an ordinance prohibiting that you could act on like I had for the tax.
Okay.
So it'd just be a matter of direction then. If the sentiment is, let's just throw it in the municipal code, and then let's do the referendum in spring, and then take it out.
That would be, what I would see happening is if you do it by municipal code, it's a temporary thing. It
Okay.
just buys you time.
Right.
Then, you've referred another ordinance to the PZC for review. They've heard your discussion on prohibition, so they could go that way too. But wait till after this advisory referendum, see what the sentiment of the community is, then the PZC can pick it up after.
Then you don't get the mile and a half.
Huh?
Then you don't get the mile and a half.
We would.
Not if you're acting on your own.
There's
Send it
not-
to us after the
There
referendum, you
won't
won't
be
get it.
anything coming in the next year within our mile and a half. I don't see that happening.
It's already been referred, you guys are gonna hear it.
Yeah, it's-
Leave
why
it,
not?
it's going to plan commission
Yeah.
this month.
So
Let
you
'em
want,
hear it.
you want them to
And
come
we-
back with a recommendation immediately?
And we all expressed that we were interested in a public hearing. I do want to hear what our community thinks.
Okay, then we'll move forward, but
Yeah, we
don't
already
be
referred it,
surprised
you
if
guys
they
are ready to
recommend
hear it,
prohibition.
yeah.
Don't be surprised.
I mean, isn't that the whole point of the PZC is to give us, to be
Yeah.
a fact-finding mission and give us a factual
recommendation.
recommendation?
then I would also
We shouldn't be
see-
giving them.
I would also suggest
we
legal
shouldn't be telling
counsel
them
attend
which way
those
to go.
meetings. I would suggest legal counsel attend those
I
planning.
would
commission
hope we have enough common sense to,
Yeah.
to feel that we need a referendum, and our recommendation would be to opt out until we have a referendum.
So wait, you.
That's what I would expect us
So
to
you've
come
made your
to.
decision already?
No, that's just
You
my
said that's what your
expectation.
recommendation.
Common
Well, that's
sense.
an
The
expectation, is
PZC
you've made your
is, the
decision.
PZC is supposed to be a
That's
fact
common
finding.
sense.
You got, I mean, when we asked the attorney to be here, you had a very valid point, shouldn't the PZC be here? You guys should, but shouldn't you guys have asked to see the attorney?
Should we have asked to see the
Yeah, I
attorney?
mean, you guys are supposed to come up with an educated decision to give us which way we should go.
We're gonna look at all the facts and come up with something to recommend to you.
You just told me you recommend prohibiting.
I didn't say, I said that's my gut feeling.
I didn't hear that feeling.
Look, what have you been saying here all along? Let's postpone and get a referendum,
I haven't
That's what
said a
you're
word.
saying.
okay?
I haven't said a single word, that's what
So,
the mayor
I
said.
mean, that's the only thing that makes any
That makes
sense.
Todd, I can guarantee
That's
you
my
I've read
opinion.
everything I can find.
No,
One
they're-
person at a time,
I
please.
can guarantee it.
There might be people on the committee that feel different. I don't know. We'll find out when we have our meeting.
Consensus of the board.
We already referred it.
Yeah, it's been referred for a September meeting.
Then we'll hold our public hearing probably in October on a plan commission workshop recommendation that we have to get Thursday night, because now we're on a timeline. Now we gotta move. And we'll probably have a special meeting in November, probably the 17th of November, which is the Thursday before Thanksgiving.
Fine,
So-
just-
So what we're saying then is we're sending it to PZ, right? And they're gonna come back and have a,
Some kind of recommendation, who knows what
correct,
the
they're gonna have a
all reasons are, but-
recommendation to us. And so if the public hearing says they want it, we're not going to referendum?
No.
We're just gonna enact it? Is that what we're saying?
The village board can do whatever it wants with the PZC recommendation. If they recommend prohibition, this board can say, no, we want to allow it.
I wanna hear what plan commission, I mean, if they're doing the research, I wanna hear what they've got to say.
I'd like to, and as that, we'll have the hearing, I'd like to hear what the
Public
citizens
hearing.
have to say.
Is that what's gonna rule us?
No.
Public hearing.
It's just
No?
advisory
Okay.
when it comes back to this body.
Okay.
But in preparation for that, I would need to prepare at least a draft ordinance to prohibit. Because I only had one for regulated previously.
But that is not what this board's recommendation was. The board has recommended an ordinance to PZC, that's what they have to have a hearing on.
Right, which.
And they would
is
recommend,
I
they could
think
recommend
is-
changing it to prohibition, I would assume.
The ordinance I thought we have is not,
It's not a prohibition,
no, it's not what we're
no,
reading.
and that passed this board 5-1. And that's where we're at.
Right.
And my feeling is that PZC might recommend to this board prohibition, that it be a prohibited use in all zoning districts. Then this village board would have to sit down with you and craft any ordinance it wants, because the hearing is over, what it wants to do.
If I can, let's stop saying that we have a feeling. We have no idea what that board is going to do, but they'll make their recommendation and then we'll go from there. The one thing that we're not gonna be able to do is, I don't know, you think we can get this advisory referendum on the ballot in November?
So,
Yeah. The only other thing that my suggestion would be is we do a newsletter or we do a direct mailing to everybody in town, ask them to submit a questionnaire to have something back from the public. Do we at least agree with that? That we should have something back from our residents?
Well, we have a public
We're
hearing.
gonna have a public hearing, right? Aren't we gonna have a public
But I
hearing?
think if your PZC is conducting the public hearing, you
They
have
have
the
to do a
notices
public
and
hearing.
all
Satisfy
for it.
everybody.
Right.
You're gonna have people that are gonna be for it and they're gonna be against it, you're gonna see where it's at, you're gonna see the concerns, you're gonna see the pluses, minuses. I think that's the truest way you do it.
And we'll move that hearing to the township.
I
think, I like the idea of a mailing to individual residents. And the reason why is I think with a public hearing, I don't know if you'll get the true sentiment of the village. It's, right, it's really easy for somebody who has an opinion or feelings about, against something to where they go, yes, I'm gonna be there, I'm gonna let my voice be heard, I am not for this, and I will show up. I think you may have some that are on the other spectrum of this. I think the town, you're gonna have people of all opinions on this, right? You're gonna have the people that are adamantly against it, you're gonna have the people that are for it, and you're gonna have people that are kinda like, whatever. It's, either way, it's not affecting my life. So you're gonna have this whole spectrum. In typically in a public hearing, right, when we've had these for, developments and this and that, you're gonna get one side that's gonna show up. You're gonna get in, you're not gonna necessarily get that true sentiment of those people in the middle, what their concerns are. Because I think you're gonna get your adamants against, I think you'll get some adamants for, but what about the rest of the people in the middle? What are their says? Because there's still those people that are like, maybe they're just not educated on it, maybe they don't have as much information on it as those that have done the research that may be for or against.
That's why you have a referendum.
That's why you have a public hearing, so.
That's why you have a referendum.
True,
So-
the feeling of the town, a referendum with the voters of the town.
Yep.
What it is, whether it's referendum, it's surveys.
What about this mailing though? Because honestly, there's still a lot of people in this community that do not vote. So not everybody's gonna come out for that referendum, but everyone will get a mailer.
If we were going to do a mayor, the suggestion that we were going to have was put it in a newsletter, which only goes to 60401. So that we would craft something and put it in there. Even then, like I cautioned you in the beginning, it's gonna be slightly skewed because you're gonna have Pheasant Lake Estates included in that. Unless we put something in there to try and identify where they live without, but then again, it's up to their honesty to tell us actually where they live. So that the referendum was the most accurate way, but then we discussed the probability of, are you gonna get voter turnout, whatever the case may be. And then now, to be honest with you, we don't have the timeline to do a referendum anyways right now. So I think the best of both worlds is to put it in the mailer and have your public hearing.
You can ask for their street address on the mailer if they don't want to put their name.
Yeah, but it's up to their honesty, just like Facebook, it's up to the honesty of the people that are doing everything, so.
The planning commission has two opportunities for a public hearing, either the fourth Thursday in October. It would be the 24th, but I will be out of town that week, so they could move it to the 17th or the 31st of October, which would be Halloween, not a good night for a public hearing. They might decide to deliberate and have additional workshops and take their time. In that event, their public hearing may not be till November. The Plan Commission is under no obligation to hold hearings. They could workshop this for 3-4 months in a row like it did some other issues, so I don't know, I can't speak for them. But they have to come back if we're to get this done right, we gotta do it by the 1st of January.
And if they didn't come back with something, we could always throw an ordinance in place in the municipal code in December still, if they couldn't get to some consensus.
Okay. Finance and Administration Committee, Trustee Beecher.
Okey-dokey. Presentation of audit is scheduled for our next village board meeting, which will be on Tuesday, October 15th at 7 p.m. Since-
Sorry. Keep going.
I'm sorry, since Monday is a legal holiday.
May I suggest we table number 2 to the next meeting?
Okay. And I would like to table request for closed session. That's the end of my report.
Public Buildings, Property, Park and Recreation Committee, Trustee Wayne.
Okay, the picnic shelter by the bathrooms down in Fireman's Park, they're gonna get, it's gonna get a new roof. We're gonna put on a metal roof like the rest of the buildings down there, so it'll be consistent with what's down there now. It's been failing, it's been up there, I don't know how many years has it been up there, 15 maybe, 20, 15. 533 Reed Street update, building has been lettered. If you've driven down Indiana Avenue, you can see the lettering on the side. I know that they have done other things. What else have you done down there, Matt?
The building is complete as of today. We started moving some stuff in, so police and EMA will have access to it by the end of the week.
Okay, that ends my report.
Planning, Building, and Zoning, Trustee Phillips.
Thank you. PZC is to meet this Thursday, September 26th at 7 p.m. to hold a public hearing on a proposed comprehensive plan and to continue discussions on the recreational cannabis zoning ordinance, pending the results of our meeting tonight. And then I would like to make a request for a closed session to discuss pending litigation
It'll be at the end of the meeting.
at the end of the meeting.
That's it?
Oh, yeah.
Public Safety Committee, Trustee Cross.
Thank you. The full-time officer list, we're still holding the oral interviews. We should be finished with that today, this week. And then we'll start putting together a list, probably in the next couple months, we'll have a final list out. The vehicle, Keith?
We still don't have a bill date for that. It's been ordered about a month and a half ago. We just don't have a date.
You don't even have a build date? Oh, jeez.
And I'd like to consider a motion approving trick-or-treat hours for Thursday, October 31st, from 4 to 7 p.m.
Sounds like a motion to me.
Second. Wake up.
Any questions? Roll call.
Missouri?
Yes.
Basil?
Yes.
Whalen?
Yes.
Caprows?
Yes.
Meyer?
Yes.
Kraus?
Yes. That's all I have.
Public Works Committee, Trustee Cologne.
Wastewater treatment plant progress update, Bob.
We're moving right along. I seen the cranes were in the air again today. We're getting near the home stretch now. We're still gonna be working out there till about Thanksgiving.
Consider a motion approving a change order from IHC in the amount of $26,111 for replacing the piping in the wet well at the Beecher wastewater treatment plant. When the new pumps were installed, cavitation occurred. It was discovered that the existing piping was sucking air since the gases and acids in the sewage from the past 20 years ate through the lining of the pipes, which were exposed to both air and water in the wet well. This replacement was recommended by the engineer and approved by the administrator and the committee chair due to the emergency nature of the replacement. The entire job had to be shut down. I got a call on this a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. This is money that's gonna come out of contingency. There's still approximately $20,000 left in contingency on the project, but it was a matter of either approve it on an emergency basis or wait for approval from the entire village board on the change order, which would have shut the entire job down about a week and a half. So we went ahead and approved it on an emergency basis. So, I mean, I don't know if we even need.
Yes, you do, because in order to receive IEPA loan funding, you gotta approve it.
Okay. So I'll approve a motion approving a change order from IHC in the amount of $26,111 for the replacing of the piping in the wet well at the Beecher wastewater treatment plant.
Motion on the floor, is there a second?
Second.
There is a second, any questions? Roll call.
Kraus?
Yes.
Meyer?
Yes.
Caprows?
Yes.
Whaling?
Yes.
Basil?
Yes.
Missouri?
Yes.
Lead line replacement project update. Matt, you got a update on that?
All the blue markings that you see on the west side of town are due to this program. We have no end in sight as far as what their plan is to actually get started with a replacement program. At this point, they're GIS mapping all of the B boxes and water mains.
Okay. Consider a proposal for design engineering for the Dixie Highway segment of water main replacement. I'm gonna request that we table that, so that way I can meet with the superintendent and we can discuss this a little more. We haven't had a chance since the bids have come in, so. Stump removal update and road patching update. Matt, you wanna hit both of those?
Yeah, both are complete as well as restorations along the edges of the roadways.
Consider replacing the streetlight at Camden and Stonington in the amount of $6,164. Last fall, this light was struck by what was believed to be a piece of farm equipment. However, after police investigation, this could not be proved. Anyway, leaves us with a bill of $6,164 for the materials. We looked into alternatives with the base and the wiring. The best bet is, our option is to go with what was replacing it with like what was there. Excuse me. Moving forward, this is something that could have been placed and claimed on our insurance. Typically, it's anything over $5,000 is usually what's worth making a claim on the insurance. I guess between the superintendent and the administrator, at the time when this happened in the fall, they did not anticipate it being over $5,000 to do an insurance claim. But my recommendation is going to be that we pay for this out of Nantucket Grove and Nantucket Cove escrow account, where there's still money. So if anyone has any questions, I'm going to make a motion to replace a streetlight at Camden and Stonington in the amount of $6,164 from the Nantucket Cove escrow account.
Motion on the floor, is there a second?
Second.
There's a second, any questions? Roll call.
Missouri?
Yes.
Basil?
Yes.
Whaling?
Yes.
Caprows?
Yes.
Meyer?
Yes.
Kraus?
Yes.
Okay, and I also have a request for closed session at the end of the meeting to discuss personnel hiring of a MM1 candidate to replace Jake Pedia.
Economic Development Community Relations Committee, trustee Lane.
Sesquicentennial update, Sitting Bull and Gould Ball, excuse me, are in for the street dance on July 25th next year. A letter was sent out to all the local eating establishments inviting them to set up at the dance and a taste of Beecher free of charge. The deadline to set up, or to let us know about that is October 15th. Village president is also booking a band. And we still have to decide what to do for Sunday, August 2nd. We need confirmation that we would do an all-church picnic from noon to 3 that day, and what we would do for the event. Perhaps we have a pig roast or something, or everybody brings a dish to pass. I don't know about a dish to pass, is that gonna work at a big public event, or like health department, things or something?
I don't know.
There'll probably be brownies.
There you go.
Stop it.
That's dessert. So, I don't know if
No.
I don't know if you do a potluck, if that's a legal thing, if you're not selling food, I don't know.
Let's get past the restaurant thing first, then we'll brainstorm that.
Okay. See who gets back to us. That's the end of my report.
Okay, item number one for the amended project budget for the quiet zone, the $100,000 figure that basically we threw out there for the quiet zone was if we did most of the work ourselves and not knowing what the permit fees were going to be and so on and so forth. We did order signs, but then Bob put the brakes on saying we need to find out all the prices because the delineators come in much, much higher. So now what you have in front of you is the now revised projected budget if in fact all the work is done, with the exception of the signs and the delineators, we would install them. And that's basically the long and short of it.
Basically, I'm asking, what is your stomach to get the quiet zone completed? Are you willing to go to the $167,000 amount? And most of that is these permit fees we're paying to the railroad, which is just absolutely ridiculous.
So, I got a couple of questions. One being, what are we into this so far?
Well, you're into the engineer for 30, and the signs maybe 1,500.
Yeah.
So we're about 32 in.
And the engineers didn't anticipate these permits being that high? They've only done how many of these? This is HR Green, correct? HR Green's only done how many of these? They didn't anticipate the permits, they just told us that we could get it done for $100,000.
At that time, that's what we figured. Yeah.
And how long ago was that?
Yeah, I mean, did the railroad triple the permit fees, or quadruple them, or?
This is a worst case scenario, John. The railroad indicated they wanted $7,500 per intersection for permits, and then you had your insurance that you had to buy per intersection and a flagger. I did not anticipate having to pay the railroad much of anything. HR Green never told us that there would be permit fees. But if you look, their permit fees are higher than the cost is for us to design it through the engineer. Their review fees are higher, which is just crazy. You know, but I guess if it's their crossing, they can charge whatever they want. If you want a quiet zone, you gotta pay it. You know, I don't know.
Which crossings are we doing again? Are we doing all of them?
This is for all five,
All five.
which would be Indiana, Penfield, Hodges, Church, Eagle Lake Road.
What if we omitted, like, Eagle Lake? It's not necessarily in town, it's country.
Yeah, why do it if you're gonna still hear something?
That's true, I'm just.
Yeah.
I mean, what about the people in Nantucket Cove?
Yeah, they're gonna start.
So hopefully there's 100 new homes built in there in the
That's,
next
yeah,
4 or 5 years.
I said nothing, scratching from the record. Make a good point.
Yeah, I think we've gotten to this point, we have to follow through with
Yeah, I
this.
think you're knee deep,
Yeah,
I think you may as well.
We need to go, do it.
Is water and sewer debt gonna do 167 for 5 years?
So.
'Cause I know you pledged 100, John, in the
That
budget.
just took a hit last month with the purchase of
Backhoe. Oh, I know.
I would say, if you're asking my opinion as sewer and water with the money coming from sewer and water debt, I think we can do it. Maybe, a short-term borrow with a small due to for like a quick year or two, and then maybe lax payment, or then leave it as a due to on there to
Right, the conditions have changed when we
let the
originally.
general build back.
When we originally did the quiet zone with the $100,000 loan, I think we did it last budget, we just never triggered it 2 years ago.
Mhm.
General fund did buy that building at 533 Reed, which wasn't on our radar.
Yep.
That reduced my fund balance in general, so I gotta be very careful as to how much we spend out of general. And another $167,000 hit right now is not good, you know?
You could do it out of sewer debt. You may have to give it a year or two. before you anticipate payments from general, let general build back up a little bit after the hit, it just.
Okay, all right.
I wouldn't recommend, you can't, water and sewer should not pay for that. It just shouldn't. It's not a water and sewer issue.
What I'm saying is, can general pay it back over 5 years?
Is there, yeah, there's gotta be a due to, but whether you delay that 5 years and let it start 2 years after the project's complete or something, I mean, something like that, I think we can look at, and I think, right, I mean, we're coming up in a couple of months, we're gonna be looking at our 5-year financial plan and be doing that planning. I think that's the perfect time where we can look at it and anticipate when general will be sturdy enough back to start making those payments back, and we'll come up with a payment plan then, but I agree with trustee Whaling, we're knee deep in it at this point, you gotta keep moving.
And to be honest with you, I think the community wants the project.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
positive the community wants the project.
Yeah. So I would say the motion would be approve the amended project budget with the due to raise to 167 from water and sewer debt to general, or we can just proceed as planned, change the numbers later at supplemental. We're trying to get this thing done by the end of the year, as well, the fiscal year. We can time it right.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Questions, motion?
Yes. Can someone restate the motion, please?
I'll make a motion amending the project budget for the quiet zone with an additional, not to exceed $170,000 funding coming from water and sewer debt,
With a due to.
with a due to from, placed on the general fund.
Okay.
For 5 years.
20? Roll call.
Kraus?
Yes.
Meyer?
Yes.
Gross?
Yes.
Whalen?
Yes.
Hazel?
Yes.
How's that?
Yes.
Okay, everybody can chime in on this one as far as the Illinois, so the hot topics were was the marijuana, which basically we've already discussed tonight. And then the gaming laws, which, I don't know what big two is about that, but anyways. Did 2 sessions on the marijuana, attended other sessions as well, and then the rest of you guys are there to chime in.
Frank and myself attended the USDA funding, you know, and I don't think we take enough advantage of that as far as being able to maybe get some commercial development or some commercial help as far as improving different things through the US government. Because I think they have a lot of money that is sitting there, and I think we have to make our people aware of that there is money out there.
Are we eligible for that, Bob?
We are in an urban county, so our CDBG program is administered by Will County government. We have brought in CDBG money into this town for water main projects over the years.
Didn't we try on Maxwell?
Yes, we did. The problem is our incomes went up, and now we don't qualify for those anymore based on our incomes in town.
We qualified many, many years ago, way
Correct.
before I was around. And then we tried, that was in 2012, when we did Maxwell Street, 2012 maybe? I
But
think
there
it
are,
was. And we didn't qualify. But all that did was, so you'd have to get a bigger snippet, right? Because all that did was take a snippet of those within that area, right? It wasn't, because it was just the work there.
correct. The other opportunities, though, is I believe private businesses can apply through USDA. I think someone mentioned there was an elevator
Yep.
in the township that would use USDA money to improve their elevator and their corn drying or whatever,
Drying,
so.
yeah,
There are opportunities in the private sector for USD funds, absolutely.
Anyone else talk to this, please?
One thing that I thought was different, Mayor Lori Lightfoot attended our committee meeting or our board meeting and made a speech about how Chicago wants to partner with the other municipalities now on issues, which is something we haven't heard out of the city in a long time.
Any old business coming before the board?
Said I had a comment on the municipal league too.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Kirsten.
No, I was waiting for everybody. You were talking about attracting business in the community, and
I attended a Bricks and Clicks Navigating Your Community Through the Ever-Changing Retail Environment, with e-commerce being one of the big subjects. They had some interesting insights on the changing of the landscape of e-commerce and its effect on local communities. They said that e-commerce is now 14 to 20% of overall sales, but it's growing much more slowly and it's finally beginning to level off. The speaker said that restaurants is the fastest growing industry because people are now spending more money to go out to eat than they're actually spending on groceries per week. So that's one of the areas to look into. Said the most popular and quickest growing market are the fast casual restaurants, like Panera and Chipotle. People don't want to sit and spend a lot of money, but they're tired of the real fast food ones. The millennials are the biggest customers of store pickup and free delivery, so retailers are beginning to downsize with smaller stores and with their online sites. And they're increasing their warehouse space and adding fulfillment centers instead of having the larger stores. And the younger generations are also moving towards what's called experiential retail. They want an experience when they shop. They're looking more towards the Old Town Square experience where they can go to shop for clothes, food, take a yoga class, have something to eat, and do those types of things. And there's traditional stores that are also partnering with online retailers. Like Target is partnering with what's called Shave Club, which is an online, replenish your shaving supplies. Kohl's partnering with Amazon. So a lot of those things are kind of going on now. And the fastest growing retailers are the off-price retailers such as Marshalls and Ross, and the more traditional ones are starting to fail. They had said that Menards is still very quickly growing. Ace is one of the biggest, fastest growing, and Home Depot and Lowe's is beginning to lose steam and not doing as well. They also talked about how businesses are looking to locate in a certain area. So I know that we've looked at that before, looked at the retail area, and they do cell phone analysis as to where people are driving to shop or eat in relation to where they live. So you can actually do a cell phone analysis of people who drive through our town and determine where they live, to try and determine, where they have to go shopping, go to a restaurant. So it's kind of scary because whenever you walk into a place, you might be getting tracked to see actually where you're shopping and what you're doing.
That's it, I'm going back to a flip phone.
So that was one of the interesting ones that I read too.
And it sounds like a lot of what we heard at the speaker.
Yes.
The experience
Agreed.
that we gotta, and we still gotta create our why.
Yes, we do.
Got it. For your new business, I have asked trustee Wheeling and trustee Meyer to work towards placing an advisory referendum on the ballot in the spring about Park District. If in fact that ballot would pass, then we would also, I would ask them to try and get the grassroots effort together to in fact put the binding referendum on the ballot for the Park District. My thinking was that if we do an advisory referendum first, which the attorney says we can, and it comes back already shooting it down after we put the information out there, we would not have to do all the work to do the grassroots effort. We can still do it grassroots, can still do it without us. But at least I'd like to get the question out there, see what they'd like to do about our Park District, so at least we know where to go. And then maybe between those two, because you got parks and you got economic development, that they can, or community relations, I'm sorry, you could then get the grassroots effort to get it going, and then at least we'll get the question answered and we'll go from there. Okay.
Just so you understand, that would be a village referendum. We cannot ask that question in an incorporated area as advisory because we don't have that authority. So this would be a question of village residents only. So even if you had positive reaction to the village and you decide the Park District was as big as the school district, you might have a negative block out there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you have to investigate, see which way they want to go, because I think the first time, I think it was 25 years ago, we went out and we looked at the school district, which took in part of Will Township and Washington Township and so on. So, those are things we have to look at. Do you do just in town, or do you incorporate everyone? Do you charge fees? Do you, there's a bunch of different things that come into play. So those are things that Marcy and myself are gonna
just to clarify, you used the school district boundaries.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So, quick question, is there any way for like township and us to collaborate to do an advisory ballot to both areas?
No,
Okay.
because right now, we would be the only, if it was a township park district idea, I think the township would have to vote to vote on that. We could not,
Gotcha.
because we have no power outside the township. So right now, all I'm concerned with is within the village. If that passes, then the grassroots people would probably be combined of maybe just more than within the village. They would decide exactly what trustee Wheeling is saying, the boundaries, what are they gonna be, because that has to be specified in the ordinance eventually in the binding referendum.
In Crete, they have a village park district.
There'd be two separate park districts.
In Crete, they have a village park district and a rural park district.
Right.
So if the township can do their own thing, we can do our own thing. But a lot of these things that we're discussing, in my mind, that will come with the grassroots effort. And if in fact it passes, because you have to also include what parks are including in it and so on and so forth. With that, is there a motion to adjourn into executive session? Threatening litigation and replacing a public works employee. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there a second, any questions?
You can stay if you want. Roll call. But you don't have to.
Missouri? Yes. Missouri?
He's gonna-
Basil?
Hey,
Whaling?
Yes.
You have to.
Yes.
By